Hello and welcome to Technophile.de roundup of budget dual SIM dual core smartphones. My name is Klaus and I would like to present you those three smartphones. You've probably seen the detailed review of the Alcatel One Touch 997D Ultra already. If not, and you're interested in that phone, please have a look in my channel. It's a very long name, but you can skip most part of it. It is unique enough saying Alcatel 997D. There is no version without that Ultra. It's actually often just skipped, even on the Alcatel homepage. Next to that are two Mobistel phones, which, well, Mobistel is the name in Germany. In other countries they are sometimes sold as Elson. They're both named Cynus T1 and Cynus T2. That's actually obviously the biggest brother, 5-inch screen here. The other two have a 4.3-inch screen. Let's first have a look at what's in common for all three of them. They're all based on the same chipset. That's the MediaTek MTK 6577, which has a CPU, a dual core, 1 GHz included, which also includes the dual SIM functionality. All three of them have 4 GB of internal storage, which is divided into 1.5 GB for apps, 1 GB for data, and the rest of that then goes for the system, which you can't really see unless you root your phone. Alcatel doesn't really specify those 4 GB, but I'm sure it also has the same amount of system memory. Data and app storage is the same on all three of them. What else do we have in common? Of course, they have Wi-Fi, GPS, UMTS, the two SIM slots, the same software for managing the two SIM slots. So there's a lot of similarities, but also some differences. First of all, from the hardware, the looks, the Alcatel has a kind of rubbery finish here on the backside, which I think feels very good and makes it less slippery than pure plastic phones. The Mobistel is quite exactly the same size, also the same weight, but it has a shiny backplate with this kind of strange pattern here. At the first look I thought, well, that looks interesting, but now, well, I think it just looks kind of cheap. And you can see how many fingerprints are already here. I just cleaned it for the video, but again, it's full of fingerprints. I personally don't like those shiny phones, but well, it's a bit of a matter of taste. Interestingly, the Cynus T2 is not just a inflated T1, but it looks different. It has this metallic looking border, which I think looks quite elegant, like aluminium, and it has a kind of a pattern in its plastic back, which makes it also less slippery. It's not like the Alcatel rubbery, but still it's kind of a nice touch. So finishing the look at the hardware, the outsides, all three of them have a micro USB port for charging and PC connection. The Alcatel has it on the bottom side, the Cynus ones on the top here. The Alcatel has the power switch on the top and the volume rocker on the right hand side, while Mobistel decided to put the power switch on the right hand side, which especially for a very big phone as this one is quite handy because it's easier to reach when you have it in your hand. And then the volume rocker is moved to the left hand side. Looking at the screens, you see one big difference, that actually the Alcatel has on-screen buttons, so you lose a part of the screen display for those three buttons here. It's actually what Google suggests and what Google does with all their Nexus devices, but there are quite few manufacturers following that lead. I think it's kind of a pity of losing these valuable pixels here. I would prefer to have touch buttons below. So I thought that would be a big advantage for the Mobistel Cynus T1, because you obviously see it doesn't have on-screen buttons, but as you can also see in the video, where are the fucking buttons? Actually, this is a problem here. They are here. If I get closer, you can probably see them depending on how the light comes in here, you can see that. But they're only lit when you press one of the buttons themselves. If you do anything on the screen, they're not lit at all. You have to press one of the buttons and then they are slightly illuminated. There's actually 4 of them, including a search button, which has come out of fashion a little bit. As you see, they're already dark again. There's the back button, the menu button, the home button. It's really annoying in everyday use that every time you want to use one of those buttons, you really wonder where is it, especially as there are 4, and the most important one, the back button, is here kind of in the middle. And you also have to press them quite close to the display, so not at the lower part but up here, to really make them work. So in the end, I found the on-screen buttons of the Alcatel to be much more usable, much more user-friendly, although it's kind of a pity to lose those valuable pixels. Luckily, Mobistel decided to improve that situation on the T2. With its huge screen size, still they didn't want to leave any of that size for the buttons. So here you have the buttons also below the screen, but only 3 of them. That's the menu button with a strange symbol for that, the home button, and on the right hand side the back button. And as you see, first of all, they're lit for a much longer time, and even if they go off, then once you touch the screen and do anything on the phone, the light goes on again. So that's a big improvement, a really small thing, and you could do that, Mobistel could do that for the T1 as well. It's just software. We'll see if an update will maybe improve that situation. One of the annoying parts of the T1. A second one is that the display sometimes doesn't react as well as on the other 2 phones. I've not really found any regular pattern there, so it just seems to be a little bit less sensitive than the other 2 are, which can sometimes be annoying when you are playing or are touching on a link on a web page and it just doesn't do anything. Not a bad thing. You can maybe get used to press a little bit more definite, but well. As you can maybe already see while I scroll around here, so to avoid that the phones go into the power saving mode, the performance of the phones is really nice. You can scroll around the home screens very fluently, and although I packed them with a live wallpaper and a lot of widgets. I did that intentionally, and normally my phone doesn't look that way, but I did that to really put them on the strain and see if they can cope with that, and they cope with that very nicely. Also going into the app drawer, this is really very smooth operation here. Here you can actually see the difference of the lost space by the buttons quite well. The Alcatel just displays 4 rows of applications, while the Mobistel can display 5 of them. One important difference, of course, is the size of the screen. The T2 has a huge 5-inch screen, so it's bigger than the Samsung Galaxy S3 or HTC One X, almost as big as the Galaxy Note 1. But it still has almost the same screen resolution as the other 2. Those 2 have 480 by 800 pixels. This one has 480 by 854 pixels. So just a few pixel rows more, much bigger screen, so the pixel density is of course significantly lower and very far away from anything called Retina and other brand names. Still, although in the beginning when I first heard about that phone, I thought, my god, what's that? It doesn't make sense to build such a big screen with such a rather low resolution. I must say that in everyday usage I have never really had any complaints about the resolution here. I've never really thought, well, now it's hard to read or it doesn't look nice. It's very well usable. If you want to have a huge display, you can very well go with one of those. Of course, a full HD or a HD display would be better in that size. You would see the difference, but it's more, I would more classify that as a luxury than as a need to have. Let's have a quick look into the software, and I think we can use the T2 here because they're really almost identical in the software configuration. All three of them run on Android 4.0.4, so ice cream sandwich. Jelly Bean or Android 4.1 is announced for them, Q1 for the Mobistel ones, Q2 for the Alcatel. And there are Android is actually left with quite a few modifications. It's almost vanilla Android style. The main changes are these buttons here in the notification area. So you have three panes where you can configure the display, have the typical toggles for data connections, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and so on, and then the profile selection. You can actually define multiple profiles like silence or meeting or things like that, and switch them quickly here. A nice addition, I think. Now going into the settings menu, you will see an additional point that normally Android does not have. The very first one here is SIM management, which enables you to configure how to deal with the two SIM cards you can put into these phones. And this really looks identical on all three of them, so I just show it on the one with the biggest screen. It's easier to see on the movie, I think. You see here the two SIM cards defined by the network name. You can actually change that name here and put work or whatever in there. By default it's the network name, so that's T-Mobile here and O2 for the other one. And there's also color to it. You can also change that, so you can choose one of those four colors for the two SIM cards. And these, the name and the color are used throughout the interface to quickly tell you which SIM card you are actually looking at. So for example here, the status indicators for the signal, they are in that color, so you can easily distinguish the two of them. When you receive a call, there is a big part of the screen is colored actually either green or orange now in this setting. This makes it easy to always know which SIM card you're dealing with. You can actually configure the phones to do voice calls, video calls, and the messaging, texting, and also data connections through either one or the other SIM card, or to always ask you which one to choose. So here by default I configured to do voice calls through the T-Mobile card. I could choose to do messaging by O2. Oh, I already did that. This way I can configure in which way I would like to use it. Maybe I have one card which has a good data plan and the other one is better for voice calls, so I can adapt that to that. Or say, well, please always ask me because I want to decide on a case-by-case basis what to do. So when I go into the dialer to do a call, then you see this indicator up here for the different networks that I have, so I can quickly change that setting and decide, okay, now I don't want to go to T-Mobile, which is my default, but change the default to O2. Quite a handy feature. What else do we have in the configuration for the SIM management? Well, you can actually define for each contact in your contact list with which SIM card you would prefer to call it. So you can say that, for example, you want to call your wife with your personal SIM card and your colleagues with a company SIM card. One thing that you cannot do on the Alcatel and the smaller and the Cynus T1 is choose a ringtone per SIM card, and I think that's quite a disadvantage because I have been using this with a company SIM card and my personal SIM card in parallel, and it would be nice to know on which number people are calling me to immediately know, is this a personal call or is it a business one. Interestingly, Mobistel has added that feature into the software of the T2, and it's not available in the T1 and the Alcatel, as I mentioned. You have to go to a different place here, actually, to the audio profiles, and the place where you can actually choose the ringtone, and then you suddenly see here up here SIM 1 and SIM 2, and can choose different ringtones for that. Unfortunately, they have broken this concept of using the colors and the name always for naming the SIM cards. It's just SIM 1 and SIM 2. You have to get used to which one it is. I found out that the left one, the SIM 1, is the same as the one that is indicated on the left here, so in my case the T-Mobile one. But I think that's a nice addition. It could still be polished a bit to have an even nicer UI, but a good idea to add that functionality here. Let's talk a little bit more about performance of the phones. I mentioned already that on the home screen, scrolling, swiping through the different screens is very fluent, very nice, a positive surprise for phones which are all significantly below the €200 mark, so that's really nice. Also, browsing really works well. I'm opening here a page of my blog, which is called the Technophile Smartphone Vergleich. So it's a comparison of all Android models that are common in the German market. Almost 100 phones with all their technical data. A very JavaScript heavy page, because you can sort and filter by each of these columns here, and have a lot of ways to manipulate the display of those of this huge table here. And as you can already see, scrolling through that table is really fast and fluent. For some reason the T2 currently has a problem loading that page. I don't know, not sure why. Here we are now. Not sure why that hiccup, but zooming is really, pinch to zoom works very well. Also the double tap to zoom into the different default zoom factors, or also causing the lines to break so you can read in the font size you would prefer. All works very well. Quite a good browsing experience, and of course with a bigger display of the Cynus T2, it is most of the fun surfing here. You can see, although on the other phones it's already a bit hard to read. Let's see if the zoom factor is the right one. That's the right one. The text size is now the same, so Android does that very well. Despite the different pixel densities, it is able to scale to the correct sizes, and of course on the bigger screen you can see more than. So you have almost 3 rows of actually data here. On the Alcatel, not even one completely shown. On the Mobistel, as it has more space due to the buttons, you have the one full row here. So browsing works well with these phones. Also, gaming experience is nice. I played Angry Birds Star Wars and Royal Revolt, and tried Dead Trigger, and heard about people playing Need for Speed, Most Wanted, Grand Theft Auto 3. So some games that are really very, very heavy on CPU load and graphics load, and they work smoothly here. I had a few stutters in Angry Birds Star Wars in a few levels, and in Royal Revolt when there's a lot of enemies around, then you could have also some stutters there, but there's nothing really huge. Gaming performance for this class of phone for less than €200 is really great. I don't think you get anything really better for that amount of money. What else do we have? The Wi-Fi performance there are huge differences actually. The Alcatel is the best phone I had yet regarding Wi-Fi performance. So even in rooms where I normally hardly get any Wi-Fi connection, it establishes a connection and keeps it very stable. While the others can't even connect there, or if they connect it's just for a second and then it breaks again. I haven't had no other phone yet in test which was as good as the Alcatel. So even Samsung Galaxy S3, HTC One X, One S, all of them were not as good in the Wi-Fi performance. So this is really a strong performer Wi-Fi wise. The two Mobistels are actually a bit, quite a bit less good here. Actually below average, I would say. And the most annoying aspect of that is that they are also often not able to re-establish a Wi-Fi connection when they went into standby mode, for example, or if you move out of the area of your Wi-Fi and go back into that. Normally they should reconnect. The Alcatel always does that very reliably, and the two Mobistels often just don't do it. You have to help them by going into the Wi-Fi settings and sometimes even explicitly saying now reconnect. You're actually often either offline or on your mobile plan suddenly, so you probably consume the contingent you have on your mobile plan, which can be costly or at least annoying. So that's a big pro for the Alcatel phone, actually. Let's have a look at the screen. As you can see here, brightness is basically the same on all of them, as long as they don't go into battery saving mode. This is actually on all three of them the full brightness setting. There is actually one glitch with the Alcatel. If you set it to automatic brightness, then you may have some problems while talking on the phone, because somehow the proximity sensor doesn't work well in that setting, and sometimes the screen comes on again while you're holding the screen to your face and talking, and with your cheek you can then unintendedly hang up the call or cause other actions, which can be quite annoying. I've actually lost 2 calls in one day that way. But luckily you can work around that by not choosing the automatic brightness, but choosing one of the 3 fixed levels here. The other 2 ones don't have that problem. Actually, the Cynus T2 can't have that problem because it doesn't even have the automatic mode, which is strange. I've never seen an Android phone with just 3 fixed brightness levels and no automatic one. That's kind of strange, but well. Let's have a look at the screens from different viewing angles. As you can see now, if I go down just towards the bottom of the phones, the viewing angles are really good. There's hardly any change. The contrast gets a bit lower, the brightness a bit lower, but no problem at all reading the displays, even from a rather wide angle. Same if you go to the side. If there weren't the reflections of my lamp here, you could still perfectly read everything from both sides. Here you see a little bit of a tint in all 3 of them, a little yellowish tint in the 2.1, bluish tint in the 2 others. But these color tints get extreme, at least on the Mobistel devices, when you go over the corners. So look at that here. Now suddenly the T1 is really extremely blue. The T2 from this viewing angle just gets very dark, and the Alcatel still has about the same brightness here, so no problem with that. From here, the Alcatel gets a little bit bluish, but you can see that the 2 Mobistel devices have also very strong tint. Same from the other sides. So actually, if you place the phone on your desk a little bit further away from you, sometimes you'll find that it is hard to read what's on the display. And that's much more extreme, much stronger with the Mobistel phones. So although Mobistel markets their phones as IPS screen, and Alcatel does not. They just say it's a TFT. The Alcatel is the slightly better display here. But I have to say, all 3 of them are really good displays for the price class. Again, below 200 euros, all of them. These are really good displays. Only when you go over in this diagonal way over the corners, you can see those tints and the contrast going down. So how about GPS performance? None of these The three phones is really a high performer in GPS. They all take a little bit longer to get the first fix than, for example, my Huawei SMP1, and also accuracy is not as high. The Alcatel is probably the best in that area. The T2 is also quite good, or definitely better than the T1. That's the weakest one in that area, and additionally it's the only phone of those three that doesn't have a working compass. Not sure if, I guess the compass is included in the system on a chip from MediaTek, but it simply doesn't work here on this phone. Coming back to performance for a while, I mentioned gaming performance. I forgot to mention that I did Antutu benchmarks on all three of them. They are all very much in the same area, around 6,200 points here, so there is not a big variance here. Looking at battery life, I used the Antutu tester. The two small phones are actually more or less in the same area. They last around three hours to go down from 100% battery to 19% battery. That's the standard test Antutu tester does. The bigger one only lasts 2.5 hours in that test, and that's surely due to the bigger screen, which of course consumes a lot of more energy for lighting it. Even though it has a slightly bigger battery, the two smaller ones have 1,800 milliampere. The T2 has 2,000 milliampere hours, but that doesn't make up for the bigger energy consumption due to the bigger screen here. So let's come to a final conclusion. If you were to choose about those three phones, which one would I recommend? I would first of all say, think about if you really want such a huge phone as the Mobistel T2 with a 5-inch screen. It's surely great for gaming, for browsing, for reading email. You have a lot of space on that screen. That's wonderful. But for example, well, handling the phone with just one hand is almost impossible. Of course, you can do a few things, but already unlocking the phone with one hand is quite tricky. I feel very unsure because I only have it loosely on my hand when I do that kind of movement. So you're always in danger of dropping the phone. And just imagine yourself being on the run with a suitcase on the train station, and you receive a call. You need to accept that call, and you're always in danger of losing your phone. It's kind of inconvenient, or at least for those people who would like to be able to do most of the things with their phone with just one hand. This form factor is quite surely too big. But it's also a matter of taste, and I know there are a lot of fans of these huge phones. So if you're interested in such a big screen, then of course the T2 is the one for you. That's the most obvious difference of those two. And it's also a very recommendable phone. The only really negative point I found here is that the Wi-Fi is not reliable. So if you're more into a data plan and don't use Wi-Fi that much, don't worry about that issue. And then it's really a very nice phone. It has a good performance. It has a good screen, although the resolution is below the standard of things like Galaxy Note or stuff like that. But it's quite okay. Give it a try. I think you won't be too disappointed, specifically not about the display. If you're more into a smaller phone, or if Wi-Fi is really important for you, then I would definitely recommend the Alcatel. And unfortunately I have to say that the Cynus T1 doesn't really have a lot to put against the Alcatel, so to say, or doesn't have any advantages over the Alcatel, maybe just besides the somewhat bigger usable screen size. But then again, there is these annoying buttons here which are almost never lit when you need them. There is this less reactive touch screen. For me personally, also the less attractive design, the more scratch and fingerprint attracting backside, while the Alcatel is a really nice phone which works very reliably. I've had no issues with that phone during testing, so that's a really a really nice phone, a good package. So my recommendation would be, if you want to have a huge phone, take this Cynus T2. There is hardly any competition, at least not available in normal stores here in Europe. And if you prefer a smaller size, as I do, I also have a 4.3-inch screen, which is quite nice to handle it by one hand. Then go for the Alcatel 997D. So far about this comparison. I hope it helped you to decide for the right phone. Maybe a bit late to get it as a Christmas present, but maybe you got a lot of money for Christmas, so you can spend it on that phone now. Yeah, if you have questions, post them either here on YouTube or on my website technophile.de. I'm trying to answer as much as I can of those. And let me know if you like the video. Give me a thumbs up. Please bookmark my channel. And I hope to see you again. And well, my name is Klaus. Bye bye.